Some sons break their parents' hearts through rebellion. Others do it through arrogance. 21-year-old Marcus Thompson did both. Ivy League educated, trust fund secured, ego unchecked, he treated everyone like they existed to serve him. His parents had created a monster. Then they sent him to the Philippines for 3 months. What happened next made them weep with relief. This is that story. Marcus had everything money could buy and nothing money couldn't. Yale degree in finance. Penthouse apartment his parents bought. Sports car collection. A resume built entirely on his father's connections. He'd never worked a real job, never faced real consequences, never met anyone he considered his equal. His Filipino mother, Elena, watched her son become someone she didn't recognize. Then she made one desperate decision that would change everything. Before we continue, like this video if you believe arrogance needs a wake-up call. Subscribe because this transformation will challenge everything about privilege and humility. Share with someone raising kids in wealth. And drop Pinoy Philippines red heart if Filipino values have ever changed someone you love. Now let's see what happened when entitlement met the real Philippines. Marcus treated restaurant servers like furniture. He snapped his fingers for service. He sent back meals for sport. He tipped insultingly or not at all. When his mother Elena, a Filipina immigrant who'd worked her way through medical school, tried correcting his behavior, he'd roll his eyes. "Mom, these people work for tips. I'm teaching them to earn it." Elena's heart broke every time. Her son had become the kind of person she'd endured racism from in her youth. Marcus's father, Robert Thompson, had built a successful private equity firm. He'd given Marcus every advantage: private schools, European vacations, networking opportunities. But somewhere in providing everything, they taught him nothing about earning anything. Marcus believed his Yale degree and last name entitled him to respect. He treated colleagues like subordinates. He ghosted job responsibilities. 3 firms had quietly asked him to leave. Robert kept finding him new positions. The cycle continued. Elena reached her breaking point when Marcus berated a Filipina housekeeper for folding his shirts wrong. The housekeeper, Maria, was 62 years old. She'd worked for the Thompsons for 20 years with dignity. Marcus reduced her to tears over creases. Elena fired her son that night, not Maria. "You don't live here anymore until you learn what we clearly failed to teach you: basic human decency." Marcus laughed. "You're joking." Elena's expression said otherwise. "I'm sending you to Manila. 3 months. My family's home. You leave Sunday." Marcus spent 3 days trying to manipulate his way out. He called his father. Robert backed Elena completely. He called lawyers about his trust fund. The trustees sided with his parents. He threatened to never speak to them again. Elena said that would break her heart but wouldn't change her decision. "You're going to Tondo, Manila. You'll stay with my brother Tito and his family. You'll work in their construction business. No credit cards. No trust fund. 3 months." Marcus realized she was serious. Marcus arrived in Manila on a Tuesday with designer luggage and an attitude. His uncle Tito met him at the airport, a man in his 50s, weathered by decades of manual labor, wearing simple work clothes. Marcus barely acknowledged him. Tito smiled patiently. "Welcome, Pamangkin. Nephew. Your mother told me you need to remember where you come from." Marcus muttered, "I come from Connecticut." Tito laughed. "No, Anak. You come from here first. Your mother's blood is Tondo blood. Time you learned what that means." Tondo is one of Manila's most densely populated, economically challenged districts. Tito's home was a small concrete structure. 3 rooms for him, his wife Rosing, their 3 adult children ages 20 to 25, and now Marcus. No air conditioning. 1 bathroom. Intermittent electricity. Marcus stared at the space that was smaller than his Connecticut closet. Tito's son Joel, age 23, smiled warmly. "You'll share a room with me. I work night shift sometimes, so you'll have privacy in the mornings." Marcus thought, this is punishment. This is hell. First morning, Marcus woke at 4:30 a.m. to roosters, street vendors, and construction noise. The bathroom had a tabo and bucket, no shower. Breakfast was fried fish, rice, and instant coffee. Tito announced, "We leave for the site at 5:30. You're working construction with me and Joel. 8 hours daily, 6 days a week. You'll earn 250 pesos per day." Marcus did the math, roughly $5 per hour. Tito shook his head. "Per day. That's standard labor wage. You're a laborer now. Let's go." The construction site was brutal. Hauling cement bags in tropical heat. Mixing concrete by hand. Carrying rebar up 6 flights of stairs. Marcus had never done physical labor. His hands blistered within 2 hours. His back screamed. The other workers, men who'd done this for decades, moved efficiently while Marcus struggled with every task. By lunch, he was dehydrated, sunburned, and ready to quit. Tito handed him water. Your mother did this kind of work putting herself through nursing school in Manila. Then medical school in America. Remember that while you complain. Marcus lasted 3 days before breaking. He called his mother begging to come home. Elena listened to him cry about the heat, the work, the living conditions. Then she said something that made him stop. Everything you're experiencing now, I experienced for 10 years before I could afford to leave. Except I had no choice. You're learning what no choice means. Call me in 2 weeks. She hung up. Marcus stared at his phone. No one had ever hung up on him. No one had ever said no and meant it. He was alone with consequences for the first time in his life. Week 2, Marcus injured his hand carrying rebar. A deep gash that needed stitches. Tito took him to a public hospital. They waited 4 hours. The emergency room was packed with people who couldn't afford private care. Children with fevers, elderly with chronic pain, accident victims bleeding onto plastic chairs. Marcus watched a nurse treat everyone with equal respect despite chaos. That nurse was a young woman named Maricel, a friend of Tito's daughter, who worked 12-hour shifts for 15,000 pesos monthly, roughly $300. She smiled when she saw him. Are you the nephew from America? Kamusta? How's construction treating you? Maricel stitched Marcus's hand with gentle expertise. He asked, why do you work here? The conditions are terrible. She looked at him with patient eyes. Because these people need care and can't afford private hospitals. Someone has to serve them with dignity. That's what medicine is, service, not status. Something cracked in Marcus's chest. He'd spent his whole life seeing careers as status symbols. Maricel saw hers as service to people Marcus would have never noticed. She earned in a month what he'd spent on a single dinner. Yet she seemed happier than he'd ever been. Week 3, Tito brought Marcus to meet the family's matriarch, Lola Carmen, age 86, Elena's mother, Marcus's grandmother he'd never met. She lived in an even smaller home, barely furnished, walls covered with family photos. She spoke limited English. Joel translated. Lola took Marcus's hands, examined his blistered palms, and said in Tagalog, good. Now you understand what your mother escaped. But you forgot what she carried with her. Gratitude, humility, and respect for people who work with their hands. You have her blood. Find her heart. Marcus cried for the first time since childhood. Something shifted after meeting Lola Carmen. Marcus stopped complaining. He started observing. How Tito shared his modest lunch with co-workers who'd forgotten theirs. How Rosing cooked for elderly neighbors despite having little herself. How Joel studied engineering at night after 10-hour construction shifts, dreaming of building better housing for Tondo families. How Maricel treated every patient with tenderness even when exhausted. They had almost nothing materially. But they had purpose, dignity, community, and genuine joy Marcus had never experienced despite having everything. Marcus started asking questions instead of making demands. Kuya Joel, why do you study engineering? Joel explained, I want to design low-cost housing that survives typhoons. Every year, storms destroy homes here. People die because they can't afford strong structures. If I learn engineering, I can help my community build safer. Marcus had studied finance to get rich. Joel studied engineering to save lives. The contrast was devastating. Marcus asked, how do you stay motivated when progress is slow? Joel smiled. Because slow progress toward something meaningful beats fast progress toward nothing important. Month 2, Marcus stopped being a burden and became helpful. He learned to mix concrete properly. He carried materials efficiently. He worked without complaint in heat that used to defeat him. The other laborers noticed. They started including him in lunch conversations, teaching him Tagalog phrases, inviting him to join basketball games after work. One older worker, Mang Ben, age 63, told him, first week, you worked like someone doing punishment. Now you work like someone learning something. That's the difference between slavery and education. You're being educated. Marcus realized, these men were teaching him what Yale never could. Marcus started using his finance education differently. He helped Tito organize the construction business's chaotic bookkeeping. He created a simple accounting system that showed where money was being wasted. He negotiated better rates with suppliers using skills he'd learned in business school but had only ever used for selfish gain. Within 3 weeks, Tito's profit margins improved by 18%.
Tito hugged him.
You have skills that help people, Anik. Why were you using them to just make rich people richer? Marcus had no good answer. He'd never considered his skills as tools for service. Maricel invited Marcus to her hospital's outreach program, free medical services in Tondo's poorest areas. Marcus watched doctors and nurses treat patients in makeshift clinics under tarps. No one was turned away regardless of ability to pay. He saw a surgeon who'd trained at Johns Hopkins choosing to work in Tondo for a fraction of what he could earn in private practice. Marcus asked him why. The surgeon replied, "Because 30 families are alive today because I stayed.
Money is a tool.
I use mine for food and shelter. Then I use my skills where they matter most. What are you using yours for?" Month 3, Marcus visited Lola Carmen weekly. She taught him to cook traditional Filipino dishes. She told stories about Elena's childhood, how his mother had sold newspapers at age 12 to help pay for school, how she'd studied under streetlights because they couldn't afford electricity, how she'd worked 3 jobs while earning her nursing degree, how she'd never complained because she knew education was her escape from poverty. Marcus had spent 21 years seeing his mother as mom who nags. Now he saw her as a warrior who'd conquered circumstances he couldn't have survived. On his final week, Marcus received a call from his father. "Your mother wants to know if you're ready to come home." Marcus surprised himself with his answer, "I need to ask her something first." Elena got on the phone. Marcus's voice cracked. "Mom, why didn't you ever tell me what you went through? Why did you hide your past?" Elena's response was gentle, "Because I wanted you to have the confidence privilege provides. I didn't want you to feel less than your peers. But I taught you confidence without teaching you gratitude. That was my failure, Anik. I'm so sorry." Marcus told his mother he loved her, and actually meant it, for the first time in years. He thanked her for sending him to Manila. He told her he'd met Lola Carmen, worked with Tito, learned from Joel, and finally understood where he came from and what that should mean. Elena wept hearing her son speak with humility she'd never heard from him.
"Are you ready to come home?" she asked.
Marcus replied, "I am. But home is going to look different now. I'm different now. Is that okay?"
Elena cried harder.
"That's all I ever wanted, Anik." Tito's family threw a despedida party.
Neighbors came.
Co-workers attended. Maricel brought hospital colleagues. Joel invited his engineering classmates. They roasted a lechon, played guitars, sang karaoke, and danced tinikling. Marcus had attended countless expensive parties in Connecticut. None had felt like this, genuine, warm, celebratory, not of wealth but of relationships. Mang Ben gave Marcus a gift, the worn gloves Ben had used for 30 years on construction sites. "You earned these," he said. Marcus cried accepting them. They represented something money couldn't buy, respect earned through shared labor. Lola Carmen pulled Marcus aside during the party. Through Joel's translation, she said, "You arrived angry. You leave awake. Your mother gave you everything except struggle. Struggle teaches what comfort can't. Now you know both worlds.
Don't forget either.
Use your privilege to lift people, not just yourself.
Promise your Lola." Marcus promised.
She kissed his forehead and handed him her rosary, the same one she'd prayed with for 60 years. "Remember who you are. You are Filipino. You are blessed. You are responsible. Do better than you were." Marcus landed in New York carrying 1 bag instead of the 5 he'd brought to Manila. He'd left most of his designer clothes with Joel and Tito. His parents met him at arrivals. Elena saw her son's calloused hands, his sun-darkened skin, his humble posture. Robert noticed Marcus hug his mother genuinely, not the performative embrace they'd gotten before. Marcus looked his parents in the eyes and said, "I'm sorry.
For everything. For who I was. For how I treated people.
For embarrassing you. For wasting everything you gave me. I'm going to do better." Robert broke down crying.
Elena held them both.
They talked for hours. Marcus told them everything, the construction site, the public hospital, Lola Carmen's stories, Joel's dreams, Maricel's service, the surgeon's choice, Mang Ben's wisdom. He explained how 3 months of struggle taught him more than 4 years at Yale. How earning $5 daily made him value money differently. How meeting his grandmother made him understand his mother completely. How physical labor gave him respect for people he dismissed. Elena listened, tears streaming, watching her son finally understand the journey she'd never fully shared. Marcus didn't go back to finance jobs his father secured. Instead, he proposed something radical: use his trust fund to start a foundation funding education and vocational training in Tondo. Partner with Joel's engineering program. Support Maricel's hospital. Create opportunities for people who had talent but lacked access. Robert initially hesitated. Marcus stood firm with a strength he'd learned from Tito. Dad, you gave me that money to build a life. I'm choosing to build one that matters. This is non-negotiable. Robert saw Elena's strength in his son. He approved the foundation. Marcus enrolled in a master's program in international development. He studied nonprofit management, Filipino economics, and Tagalog. He flew to Manila quarterly, staying with Tito's family, working alongside Joel on housing projects, volunteering at Maricel's hospital. He hired Joel as the foundation's engineering director after Joel graduated. He created scholarship programs for construction workers' children. He partnered with the surgeon from the outreach program to fund medical missions. He named the foundation Lola Carmen's legacy, after the grandmother who'd saved him by seeing through him. 1 year after returning from Manila, Marcus gave a TEDx talk about privilege, humility, and transformation. He shared his story honestly: the arrogant son who'd treated people like servants, the mother who'd forced him to face her past, the 3 months in Tondo that rebuilt him completely. He talked about entitlement as a disease that comfort spreads and only struggle cures. He challenged wealthy families to give their children hardship, not just advantage. The talk received hundreds of thousands of views. Hundreds of messages from parents asking, how do we humble our entitled kids? Marcus's answer was always the same: don't protect them from your past. Share your struggles. Let them see the work behind your success. And if they still don't understand, do what my mother did: send them somewhere real. Somewhere uncomfortable. Somewhere humbling. Let them earn respect instead of expecting it. He became an advocate for what he called struggle education, intentionally creating difficulty for privileged children to teach gratitude. Elite schools invited him to speak. Parents sought his advice. But Marcus's real work remained in Manila, in Tondo, with a family who taught him what Yale couldn't. Elena and Robert watched their son's transformation with awe. The arrogant boy who'd berated housekeepers now worked alongside construction laborers. The entitled graduate who'd ghosted jobs now ran a foundation employing 200 Filipino workers. The son who'd ignored his heritage now spoke Tagalog and wore Filipino pride openly. Robert asked Elena one evening, when you sent him to Manila, did you know it would work? Elena smiled. I knew if anything could save him, it was meeting the people I came from. They saved me. I trusted they'd save him too. 2 years after that first trip to Manila, Marcus married Maricel, the compassionate nurse who'd first stitched his hand and shown him what purpose looked like. Their love had grown slowly and genuinely through shared work, shared values, and shared commitment to Tondo's community. The wedding was in Tondo, simple but joyful, attended by construction workers and hospital staff and neighbors who'd watched Marcus transform from arrogant foreigner to beloved community member. Lola Carmen, now 88, blessed them in Tagalog. Mang Ben gave a speech about watching the boy who couldn't carry cement bags become the man who carries his community forward. Marcus cried through the entire ceremony. Happy tears. Grateful tears. Humble tears. Marcus and Maricel split their time between New York and Manila. He managed the foundation's funding and partnerships. She ran the medical programs and hospital expansions. They lived modestly despite having access to wealth: a simple apartment in Manila, a small house in Connecticut. Marcus still worked construction sites quarterly, keeping himself grounded. He taught his father's private equity firm summer interns about ethical investing and using finance for social good. Some thought he was crazy leaving wealth behind. Marcus thought they were crazy not seeing wealth's true purpose: lifting others. This story isn't about a spoiled son who visited a poor country and became enlightened through poverty tourism. It's about someone who'd been given everything except context, who'd never learned the struggle behind his comfort, never understood his mother's journey, never respected people who built the world he took for granted. The Philippines didn't humble Marcus through poverty. Filipino people humbled him through dignity: Tito's patient teaching, Joel's purposeful ambition, Maricel's compassionate service, Mang Ben's hard-earned wisdom, Lola Carmen's quiet strength. They showed him that respect isn't given to credentials or inherited wealth. It's earned through work, granted through humility, and multiplied through service. Marcus's parents didn't break down in tears because their son became poor. They wept because he finally became good. Because the arrogant boy who treated people as beneath him learned he'd been beneath them all along. Beneath their dignity, their work ethic, their generosity, their grace. Sometimes the greatest inheritance isn't money. It's being broken down completely so you can be rebuilt correctly. And sometimes the people best equipped to rebuild you are the ones you once would have never noticed. The construction workers, the nurses, the grandmothers, the families who have little but give everything. Marcus came from privilege. But he found himself in Tondo. And that, his mother knew, was worth every tear.